So today I have Joe Burnham, a buddy of mine from Brown & Brown Insurance. I really appreciate you joining me, Joe.
Jason, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So today we're here to talk about just some white-collar crime type of stuff and how it relates to insurance. So I know that you have some experience regarding, fraud and ERISA plans. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of like the background of some of the stuff you know in terms of that area?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to dive in it. And just so everyone's aware, I am an insurance nerd, so I'll try not to get too crazy here. But keeping it high level for everybody, when you think about crime in a business, right, you think about if it happens internally versus someone does it to us. Those are two different things. There's first, third-party claims. There's crime coverage. There's cyber coverage. There's fiduciary liability coverage. So there's a lot of different coverages out there that can help protect a business internally and externally. When you're thinking about actual crime, let's think white collar crime. Let's think about someone, stealing money out of an ERISA plan. If an employee or, someone that's a manager at a company was to take money out of that company's ERISA plan, right? Say they do it intentionally. There could potentially be coverage there. It could be on an ERISA bond or a crime policy that company has itself. There's no way to know for sure if it would be covered unless you actually had a professional review the policy. But you would hope that the policy was underwritten correctly where there would be coverage if someone intentionally stole money out of that. One example that I've seen recently, unfortunately, is, somebody was taking money out of the 401k to help pay for business expenses, right?
Yeah.
And their thought was, and you can find this on the news, I can share the article, but their thought was, I'll get the business expenses taken care of. I'll put the money back into the 401k later. No one will be the wiser. The problem with that is all these employees are losing on that potential growth in their retirement plan. It's very illegal. So that individual was caught. There was a crime policy in place. It was completely covered. So that potential lost growth of those individuals was not only covered, but it was put back into those accounts. So that's just an example of a potential crime policy and a potential covered claim.
No, Joe, I think you're really right. I mean, the last time that we saw a lot of this stuff happen was after the housing crisis, right? I mean, you see people trying to make it month to month, and maybe they'll try and make a little bit of mortgage, trying to keep their employees around. And it was kind of sad because, you see obviously people who are just doing this because they're greedy. But then you also saw a lot of people that were doing it because they're like, this is the fourth, fifth generation of this business. And if I could just make another month, I'm making another month. And they start dipping in different pots, which is obviously very illegal. But it was what they always say, good intentions, but wrong way. It was just really sad to kind of see that stuff. And I think we both can kind of see that there's a potential this time around with the pandemic where none of us thought that, I think the last time I saw it was over a year ago. None of us thought we're going to be out of business for this long for some of these smaller companies. And I could see the same thing kind of happen, that they were trying to maybe make it to the PPP loan or the second round and thinking that, it's going to be over by the fall. And there was a lot of this information out there that it was going to be. But that's a scary proposition to try to be in business for that long.
It is. And unfortunately, just like you said, it's happening more and more. It's a sad truth, but we got to protect ourselves where we can. And you had mentioned, what if someone tries to, commit a crime on us externally onto our company, right? Well, with right now everyone being online, let's think about cyber insurance for a second. Let's think about that exposure. All these companies now, everyone. If you have a website, if you have personally identifiable information, anything with HIPAA, any type of credit cards, you have an exposure there. And in terms of claims happening nowadays, that is the fastest growing market. It's cyber. So cyber is a type of a policy that I highly recommend everybody have. And again, not all policies are the same, but it's scary what we're seeing out there in terms of claims. And some of them are covered and some of them aren't. And a sad part of it is we've seen some situations where there could have been coverage and it just wasn't done necessarily correctly. So again, when I talk about crime, I'm talking about cyber in the same way that not everything's equal. You got to be really careful and really have something reviewed by a consultant just to make sure that your business is covered adequately.
Well, Joe, what about, bringing it kind of full circle now with the pandemic? Was there pandemic insurance that was going on? Do some companies kind of have that? And did that actually work out for them during this time?
So it's interesting you say that, because when this pandemic happened, everybody naturally went to, well, I have business income insurance, loss of revenues, I should be covered. Unfortunately, on almost all, not all, but almost all policies out there, there wasn't any pandemic insurance. Virus-related claims was excluded. Now, there's still some things up in the air. There's still litigation going on across the country regarding, workers' comp type claims with the pandemic, lost revenues with the pandemic. So we don't know how some of those are going to fall. Most situations, it wasn't covered at all. There was actually one instance, I don't know if you read about this, where Wimbledon actually for years and years took out a pandemic-specific policy, and it paid out. And it paid out a lot of money, and that was, they were really smart for doing that. But most business owners and most professionals in my space, that's not something that people were, driving home. You really need pandemic insurance, or a business owner wasn't like, I need pandemic insurance because this is unprecedented in the modern era. So moving forward, there is going to be pandemic related products, but it's one of those, it's a frustrating catch-22 because it's going to have next to it excluding COVID-19. So it's going to be for the next pandemic. So it's something, it'll be interesting to see what the rates look like on that. If it's expensive, if it's not, if it's included on a current policy, or if it's a monoline policy. But something we'll keep an eye on, and you should also keep an eye on, because it's something, we've seen it happen. It can always happen again, I guess, unfortunately.
Wow, so you're saying that loss of income insurance essentially excluded the pandemic itself. So there was specific language in there about that?
Not yet. If all policies were different. Again, I keep going back to that because all these insurance companies must have on an ISO form, what it would state would be virus-related claims, or there's an exclusion for anything related to a virus in regards to business income. So that was the biggest one we saw. But if you get into surplus market, which is, again, I won't go full insurance nerd, but there's different wordings out there, and some policies had more carvebacks than others. But the vast majority, it flat out excluded it.
Oh, wow. So, wow. And I guess that was probably one of the fine print things that no one paid attention to before last year.
Right.
All right. Well, Joe, I really appreciate you coming on today. But before you leave, when should people contact you? I know when I contact you for all my insurance needs, but what's the best time for people to contact you, and what type of people are you looking for to get insured?
So, and I appreciate that. So the company I work for, it's called Brown & Brown Insurance. I'm specifically a consultant, both on the commercial side and the health side. Specifically, if you want to reach out to me, would be for a business owner, a CFO, or a controller who has questions about their insurance. If it's, hey, we do have a crime policy or a cyber policy, but I'm not sure if it covers all those things you just mentioned, or we haven't had it reviewed in a long time. Something that we love to do here is to just get into the weeds for you, review the policies, and make sure there are no gaps in coverage. There's no insurances that could be added by endorsement that aren't, just because someone didn't ask. Because come claim day, if it's one of those situations where you could have had coverage if someone had just asked or saw it, no one's going to be happy with that. Nobody wants it. Right. So think of me if you're looking for insurance to be reviewed as a business owner or a decision maker, and I'd be happy to do so.
Well, Joe, I can tell you what I like about you the most is, especially during this pandemic, you couldn't get anyone to answer anything, right? The bankers weren't answering the phones, and insurance agents, and I know you are excellent with customer service, and I think that's something that's missing, that when we call you, it's you. It's not some other place on a different continent that we get some person that just drives us nuts, right? That doesn't know any answers. So I'm very appreciative of every person that I sent to you, and hopefully you can come back on soon and tell us some more insurance tips.
Hey, I'd be glad to be on. I appreciate you. I appreciate working with you. And yeah, 24/7 I'm available, just like you with your clients. Always available, cell phone, weekends, nights. We're here to help. So again, I really appreciate the time, Jason.
Good talking to you.
Take care.